Resident Evil has one of the most divided fan bases in video game history just due to the fact that it's been going consistently for 30 years. So you see folk that prefer the older games or the more action-oriented games, the newer remakes. And that's what we need to talk about is the remakes, because I've been seeing a conversation on X that is blowing my mind. You normally see things like, what's the next remake? Is it Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil Code Veronica? Spoiler alert, by the way, we don't need a remake of any of those. We just stop with the remakes. But the one thing I've been seeing is people asking for a remake of Resident Evil 1. The remake from 2002 that's, been ported as of 2015 to basically every platform ever. It is widely considered the gold standard for how to do remakes. So welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and we're going to check out this video and frankly debunk it. It's called, do we need a modern remake of Resident Evil? Because the answer is no. No, we don't need a remake of Resident Evil, and it's so wild to me to see this many individuals, oftentimes just guided by recency bias, clamoring for this, when the 2015 remaster of the 2002 remake still holds up brilliantly. So yeah, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. Let's dismantle this, again, recency bias argument. I will admit, it's a cool
intro. What is
intro.
going on, guys? Welcome back to the Game Chamber, and holy hell, Cody's doing an edited video on this channel. It's been like years. So for those of you that follow this channel, you have seen that I have been going through absolute Resident Evil fever in anticipation for the new 9th game, Resident Evil Requiem. We have played through Biohazard. We have played through Village. I played through Resident Evil 4 Remake in VR on my own before.
Alright, great. So he's listed 3 games he's played through, all 3 recent games, only one of them good. Biohazard, by the way, he's referring to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. But yeah, Village, not a good Resident Evil game. Resident Evil 4 Remake in VR, Resident Evil 4 Remake is not even a good Resident Evil game. It's a good game. It's a terrible Resident Evil game / terrible remake, so you got that going for you out the gate.
Doing all of that, and we're getting ready to play through some of the classic games, the PS1 versions of the original trilogy. I love this franchise. It is my favorite video game franchise of all time. I have been a massive fan ever since Resident Evil 4, and I could not get enough.
And there it is. And look, this is going to sound pretty gatekeeper and elitist, and I don't mean this as an insult, because Resident Evil 4 was a lot of folks' introduction to the franchise, and to be fair, that's totally fine. Like, there's a reason Resident Evil 4 is held to such high regard. But it also doesn't surprise me that somebody who got into the series with 4 is going to be advocating for a remake of Resident Evil 1, which, again, is my all-time favorite franchise as well. So I come off as a bit gatekeeper and elitist. Well, it's because I'm right.
Of any of these games ever since. And there's a topic that I have been very passionate about for a long time now, that every single time I bring it up, not only do I get just absolutely blown away at some of the answers and responses that I get and the differences of opinion, but I get all the more passionate about my own view, which is whether or not we need a remake, a modern remake of the original Resident Evil. Now we have...
Spoiler alert. We don't. I know I've already said that, but it really bears us saying. I want to drill that into your head. If you have not played the original, I don't even want to hear excuses like, tank controls are too hard, because the version that you get on Steam or on the PS4 or PS5 or whatever doesn't even use tank controls. It can, but it's a toggle on and off. You can just use regular control schemes. So pretty much any argument that individuals can use for trying to claim why Resident Evil 1, the remake of Resident Evil 1, doesn't hold up to modern standards is completely invalid due to all the QOL that was put into the 2015 HD remaster.
Gotten a remake to Resident Evil 2, which was followed very quickly, arguably too quickly because it felt a little rushed. Resident Evil 3,
a little.
And then finally with Resident Evil 4. And even though I still really enjoy Resident Evil 3, if you want to negate that one as being a bit of a disappointment, Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 have been pretty much universally acclaimed and loved by both modern and old school Resident Evil fans alike.
Now, let's talk about that for a moment. Universally acclaimed and loved by old school and new school fans alike. This is already a disingenuous framing of the argument. There are plenty, and I mean plenty, of classic fans, like your boy here, who don't like these remakes. Hey, they are fine enough games on their own. Both of them, and I do mean both of them, are a far cry, absolutely pale in comparison to the originals, whether it be due to cut content, whether it be due to alterations of the story, alterations of the characters, changing certain, well, I guess alterations of the story would be, also changes to the story, whether it be the addition of DLC that were things that were in the original versions of the game that are now being sold and repackaged as an extra, so you're not really even getting the full game on release, changes to the canon going forward that then kind of muck up things that happen in, let's say, Resident Evil 5, for example, Resident Evil 6. These games are a mess. In fact, the only thing they can offer that is better than the originals, like objectively better than the originals, are the visuals and sound design, which, yeah, they're modern games compared to PS1 games. It's kind of to be expected. But if that's the only thing you can offer is visual representation, and this isn't a nostalgia goggles sort of thing. Guys, I don't know how to tell you this, but there are times when old thing isn't just remembered better because of nostalgia. No, it's just actually better. Like, you don't make the argument that you rewatch Empire Strikes Back or The Predator over and over because of nostalgia. No, they're 80s movies that are just good movies. The old factor is kind of irrelevant. So anyway, to his point about about people loving the remakes, whether they're old school and new school fans, yeah, there are people that do. In fact, a lot of people that do. But to just discount that there is a notable swath of us that don't like them, or at the very least think that they are bad remakes, that's disingenuous out the gate.
They are two of easily the best remake video games out there, but I would say they are all...
Absolutely, I can think of plenty of remake video games that are better off the top of my head. The Spyro Reignited trilogy, the Crash Insane trilogy, and the remake of Dead Space was a better remake than these because, again, it largely kept things the same one-to-one. I mean, I can go on, so it's neither here nor there.
Also a part of the conversation of greatest survival horror video games of all time. And given the success both just critically and financially of all three of those remakes, obviously we're going to continue to get these from Capcom. They're giving us new iterations like Village and then now here soon with Requiem, but inevitably we're going to get some more remakes, and there's always the question of which one should be next. Some people say Resident Evil 5, some people say Resident Evil Code Veronica.
If you're one of the individuals saying that Resident Evil 5 needs a remake, you need your damn head examined. Be like, oh, it's almost 20 years old. It'll be 20 years old in 2 years. Yeah, have you played it? Because it plays really well. It holds up beautifully. Visually, it holds up. Gameplay mechanics hold up. How would you know? Well, I'll tell you how I know. My dear friend Cinevere, VTuber Cinevere, check her out. Her channel's amazing. Her and I have streamed the game together multiple times. She had never played a Resident Evil game before in her life. So last year, I introduced her, and she wanted to play it with me. So what do we play? We play Resident Evil 5. It was her first Resident Evil game. Yeah, I know. She didn't start with the first one. It is what it is. The point is, to get her into the franchise, I started her with Resident Evil 5 so we could play together. She had no frame of reference for Resident Evil at all. Had never played a Resident Evil game. So when we started with 5, which, again, came out in 2008, if it had issues, she probably would have noticed them through the lens of modern gaming, but she didn't. She fell in love with it. She fell in love with it so much so, by the way, that over the course of like 2 months, we played through it 4 times together.
Some people say Resident Evil 0, others say the original Resident Evil. But the original Resident Evil as an answer is the only one that I ever see this hugely passionate pushback on.
Correct.
Now, after the Resident Evil 4 remake came out, given the ending of that game and some of the chatter and the rumors among fans and some of the, industry insiders, the most prevalent rumor has been Resident Evil 5, that they're going to immediately go from Resident Evil...
No, actually the most prevalent... Again, he's wrong again. This guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. The most prevalent rumor has been Code Veronica, actually. In fact, Code Veronica and Resident Evil 0 have both gotten far more rumors than Resident Evil 5. The Resident Evil 5 stuff is actually very recent comparatively.
Evil 4 to rebooting the co-op, action-centric Resident Evil 5. And ever since that has been a part of the conversation, I have been extremely outspoken and passionate about my thoughts on what they should do. And I've said it numerous times in my live streams, but to reiterate it again here to kind of start off my point, I think the only sensical thing that they should do to follow up this remake trilogy that they just knocked out of the park pretty much across the board, in my opinion,
Wrong.
is to go back and remake the original Resident Evil, follow that up with Code Veronica, and then end another remake trilogy with Resident Evil 5. And
This is what you would call toxic positivity. He keeps saying they knocked it out of the park. He keeps saying people loved it. He keeps saying they're universally praised. But he doesn't actually explain why. He needs you to believe that this is the truth. They're actually explaining the truth. And I'm sure he's going to explain why Resident Evil 1 needs a remake. That's the whole point of this video, is to debunk that claim. But I can't even take what you're saying with good faith out the gate when you've gotten so much information wrong and your source is trust my feelings, bro.
the reason why I say that is because there are so many modern gamers who have been introduced to Resident Evil with these modern remakes.
And that's a problem.
And 2, 3, and 4, for the most part, is a very coherent trilogy where it starts off with the Raccoon City outbreak and Leon and Claire and Ada. Then you get Resident Evil 3, which is Jill's little side story inside of that same outbreak that's kind of coinciding narratively with Resident Evil 2. And then you pick up years later in Resident Evil 4, which continues the story of Leon and Ada and his fight against the Las Plagas. I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever to establish that and establish this new generation of Resident Evil fans and then completely bar them from being able to understand and fully appreciate the story and the context of what happens in Resident Evil 5.
All right, let's address that, because that is a terrible point. That is a ridiculous point, that it would bar them from understanding the context of Resident Evil 5. Nearly every single Resident Evil game, save for Code Veronica, ironically, is available on Steam or GOG. Like, there's nothing keeping you from playing Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1 Remake, again, the 2002 version, it's actually the 2015 HD remastered version, going into 6. The only barrier to entry is your own preconceived notions about what these games are. And I guess another barrier to entry would be they've made so many changes and story alterations and changes to the characters and the dynamics that destroy the timeline, if we're being honest, like destroy the canon narrative, that yeah, Resident Evil 5 actually doesn't make sense when looking at it incongruently with the existing remakes. You kind of do have to play the originals, but the idea that people are barred from it, no, it's them saying insane things like, I don't want to play old game because new shiny thing better, without actually having any basis for it, because again, it's entirely based off recency bias and what is effectively tourism to the franchise.
That is a culmination storyline. That is a climax storyline that is wrapping up the drama and the rivalry and everything between Chris, Jill Valentine, and Wesker. There's going to be a lot of people that would jump into Resident Evil 5 and not have much of an idea of who Chris Redfield is.
Yeah, just like how a bunch of people jumped into Resident Evil 2 that hadn't played the original Resident Evil 2, or like how people jumped into Resident Evil 3, and they certainly didn't play Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, even though that is the best of the original PS1 trilogy. So again, this is a very ridiculous argument.
Not really understand the relationship that he has with Jill Valentine because she was completely solo aside from Carlos in Resident Evil 3, and have absolutely no fucking idea who Wesker is aside from him being that guy that was shown very briefly at the end of Resident Evil 4. But if you go back and start by remastering and rebooting the original game, Spencer Mansion...
That right there was a perfect example of why this game doesn't need a remake. Just visually on screen. Ignore what he says, but watch this.
Can start by remastering and rebooting...
Shot and destroyed the armor. That is ridiculous. Like, there is... Resident Evil has always been about, at least the classic games, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, you know, the ones that are largely been remade. And I get that this is a mod, but you've never really had like destructible environments. Everything has been more about puzzles and whatnot. This is indicative of modern gaming slop. It's indicative of people that need this sort of like instant gratification, being able to do XYZ thing, as opposed to just appreciating the intended elements of how you're supposed to progress through the game, the puzzles are supposed to be solved, the slow and steady aspect, the idea that like the game, the horror doesn't really come from the combat, such as, being able to aim and whatnot. It comes from the resource management, the fight or flight, which is a reason that the over-the-shoulder camera angles don't work for these as horror games at all, at least not to near the effect as the fixed camera angles do. Like, this just sort of encapsulates why a remake of Resident Evil 1 wouldn't work.
The original game, Spencer Mansion, Chris, and Jill in that scenario, building up to Wesker being revealed as the main villain, and then follow that up with a Code Veronica remake, which just bridges that story even more, where you got Claire looking for her brother, and then eventually he shows up, and Wesker's alive, holy shit, and then you culminate it, as they did originally, with Resident Evil 5. To me, that would be the perfect direction, and I cannot for the life of me understand any arguments against that direction.
Here's the argument. Because these remakes have destroyed the franchise and the characters, as I've been saying. There is no good reason to remake a remake when the version that we have now, A, holds up, B, not only holds up, but is the gold standard for remakes, and C, is infinitely accessible.
One that I've heard that I can halfway entertain is people saying, well, I want to see a game remade that is much more in need of a remake, something that is stuck in old school graphics or old school Resident Evil engines and gameplay styles like Code Veronica. I want to see that game remade, or even something like Resident Evil 6 that was pretty much a failure across the board for a lot of Resident Evil fans. Seeing them take a new crack at that and seeing if they can actually do it much better. There's only room to improve with that one. I'd rather...
Again, even that, leave it as is, but whatever. This is going to be an incredibly long video if I stop making comment for everything he's saying.
See them take a crack at that than trying to remake something that technically we did get a remake for back in 2002 on the GameCube and has been remastered and ported all the way up to current console generations.
Exactly.
Okay. I hear you. I hear that. Selfishly, as a fan, I can sympathize with, I was there from the beginning, and what would I want most? What would I be most excited for?
No, that's not selfish. That's such ridiculous framing. Selfishly, as a fan, no. It is not selfish to be a fan and want to safeguard, these things that you love from the in-shitification of the modern industry. Okay, it's the opposite of selfish. It is a selfless preservation. The idea that you're saying, this has been done, it has been done well, I encourage people enthusiastically to play that version, because that is the canon version, that is the superior version, that is the version that was created by the dev team to experience as is not selfish. It speaks to appreciating the actual, the canon story. It speaks to appreciating the game itself. It speaks to appreciating the concept of preservation above shiny new toy that's nostalgic cash grab that will be forgotten when next shiny new toy that is nostalgic cash grab releases.
Something else besides Resident Evil 1. Cool. That's no problem for me whatsoever. But the vast majority of responses that I get are really just people gatekeeping. It's people trying...
Oh, shut the fuck up. As if gatekeeping is a bad thing. Right. Yeah, gatekeeping... The lack thereof is why we're in the predicament that we're in with so many video game franchises, with so many film franchises, with what seems to be happening to the anime landscape. So yeah, this is, again, toxic positivity, the video. Dude is not going to be able to make any good cohesive argument. It's just going to be internet X, Twitter buzzword, oh, gatekeeping bad, which is ridiculous.
Trying to bar who should be accepted or notarized as a true fan of Resident Evil.
Yes.
If you weren't there in 1996, then fuck you. Or if...
No. That's not true at all. In fact, you said yourself that you didn't start with this series until Resident Evil 4. So clearly, That's not how the Resident Evil community, at least traditionally, had worked, because you were welcomed with open arms and you seemed to, for whatever reason, love these games. It's not about being there in 1996, and if you weren't there, you can't hang. It's about wanting to change and alter and usurp what we had, what we have, and what we want for your own selfish needs, for your own selfish wants, because you need to feel included. Not everything's for everyone. Now, if you want to come to the cookout and be party and have fun and hang out with all of us because you appreciate what was, because you at least made the attempt to appreciate what was, dude, we cool. We in the ballpark. Sevi Love right now. Shout out to my girl Sevi. She's playing Resident Evil 1, this exact version, the 2002 remake, for the very first time. It's her very first Resident Evil game ever. She is enjoying it. It's hard as hell because she's never played a game like this before. She's told me as such, but she's loving it. Great. She's invited to the cookout. So no, changing what we love is, yeah, we're going to gatekeep that.
If you don't want to go back and try to experience what a game was like in 1996, then fuck you. Or
yes,
even if
correct.
you do have the desire and you give a valiant effort to go back and try to play a game from 1996 and it just doesn't really work for you. It's jarring, the gameplay style is so archaic that you can't get into it, and you're just not...
Skill issue. Shut up. Skill issue. Again, you don't have to like the game. Not saying you have to like Resident Evil 1 from 1996. That no one's making that argument. He's saying people are making that argument, but that's not the case whatsoever. But if you can't, for one, just from a gameplay perspective, skill issue. But for another, okay, maybe you suck, fine. That doesn't mean we need to cater to you. That doesn't mean we need to cater to the idea of remaking this game because you're bad at it. Which, by the way, is an invalid argument out the gate because, like I said, we're talking about the remake of the first game, not the original from 1996. We're talking about the 2002/2015 remake that already exists, and that's not archaic in the slightest, so it's a disingenuous argument.
Not having fun, and so why would you sit there and dump 8 to 10 hours into something that you're not enjoying? I really want to experience this story and these characters, but I would like it.
Great, but you're not going to experience those story and the characters, because in every single remake thus far for 2, 3, and 4, the story and characters have been changed, and they've been changed for the worse. So why would you sit and try and pretend and lie to the audience who might not know that they've been changed and altered because they didn't play the originals, that that's the story they're going to experience? If you played Resident Evil 2, 3, or 4 remake, if you like them, fucking fine. But you did not experience the story and the characters of the original 2, 3, and 4. They are that significantly altered and changed.
In a modern engine and a modern control scheme and a modern camera scheme, I just can't get into the old school survival horror. Well,
Great, then you're not a fucking fan. That's fine, move on. It's not for you. Not everything is for you, alright? Call of Duty's not for me. I'm not sitting here demanding they change Call of Duty to make it for me. Alright? I'm not sitting here demanding they change Gears of War to make it for me. It's just not for me. It's just not games that I particularly like. And that's fine.
Of you, yet again, fuck you. And not only do I not understand that mentality, I actually despise it. Like,
of course you despise it, because you bitch made. If you don't like fixed camera angles, taking controls, you never liked RE. Facts. As a new fan to start with Resident Evil 2 Remake, I love the Resident Evil 1 Remake and don't want it to get remade again. If you're a modern gamer who can't handle anything slightly old, that's on you for missing out on one of the greatest games ever made. Facts again. Fucking new fan that wants to change things. Facts again.
Like, all the way across from movie fandoms to video game fandom, even music fandom, the term gatekeeper exists for a reason.
Yeah, and it's a positive thing. Gatekeeping is a good thing.
And anybody that actually has some maturity and some common sense, I feel like you just cannot stand the mentality of somebody that acts like a gatekeeper. Just on a...
Really? I want to show y'all something. So this Cody Leach guy, right? I want to show y'all something. Because we can call out his hypocrisy right now. We can call out how wrong he is right now. We just got to go to his X, right? We just got to go to his X. Return to Silent Hill is a movie adaptation of a highly beloved video game, Silent Hill 2. Unfortunately, this is yet another horrible video game adaptation that completely bastardizes the source material. Oh, interesting. You care about bastardization of the source material now. Do you know what could have helped? And in fact, do you know what did keep this from being a success? Gatekeeping. Do you want to know what could have helped keep this from being made so that you didn't have to suffer through the bastardization of the source material. Gatekeeping. Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like when gatekeepers do their job properly, which is to uphold and uplift and protect the sanctity of the source material and of the legacy and the canon and the story and everything that we care about. It's a good thing. So yeah, you don't get to sit there and say things like you're sick of this shit and be all upset as spaghetti about Return to Silent Hill, which was a dog shit movie. I completely agree with you on. But then try and pretend that gatekeeping is a bad thing. You can't have your cake and eat it too, buddy.
On a very basic level, who the fuck are you to dictate who can and cannot be a Resident Evil fan? And who the fuck are you to say what the requirements are to be considered a Resident Evil fan? So
I'll tell you who the fuck I am. I'm the guy that has been buying these games and playing these games and buying the merch and going to all the movies, even though they're absolutely terrible, and anything and everything. I'm the guy that got, the tattoo permanently marked on my body for the love of the franchise. I'm the guy that doesn't want to see something that I have invested damn near 30 years of my life into twisted and altered and usurped and destroyed by people who want to use it just as a tool for some sort of clout on the internet, to play it for a little bit, to get some likes and some retweets and get some stream numbers and some donations, and then discard it and move on when next shiny thing comes out. That is who I am. You know what? I don't like seeing my toys be taken without my permission, be borrowed, and be broken, and then just not even an apology, because we've seen it happen over and over and over to a myriad of other franchises. Again, whether it be in gaming, whether it be in movies, whether it be in comic books. So yeah, people a little bit defensive. You think the Star Trek and Star Wars fans right now that are feeling nothing but apathy for the current just existence of these franchises that not even aren't for them anymore, but aren't for anyone, let alone for real fans, are unjustified in saying you shouldn't be here?
somebody plays Resident Evil 9 Requiem for their very first Resident Evil game and loves that, and that's the definition of their current Resident Evil fandom, that's not good enough to you because they happen to be born 30 years after you? This
is such a disingenuous argument. No one has made this claim. Nobody has made this claim whatsoever. He is shadowboxing, he is shadowboxing these, gatekeeping villains that don't actually exist to try and make it seem as if he has a point. This is a level of disingenuous takes that nobody actually wants to call out. Not just in the Resident Evil fandom, but in any fandom on the internet.
The fuck you talking about? But most importantly, not only do I feel like you should encourage, but you should totally champion any avenue that somebody takes to becoming a fan of these video games, these stories.
No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. You should not champion any avenue. There are objectively bad avenues to champion. I'm sorry, I don't know. If somebody, would you champion someone playing like the Game Gear version or the iPhone version of Resident Evil 4 as their way to get into the franchise in 2026? The fuck you wouldn't. And I know that's an extreme example, but the fact of the matter is, I'm sorry. The community has come together, and for the most part, we agree on a certain set of standards. Most folks think that 6 sucks. Why would you invite somebody in to start with 6? In fact, you said it yourself earlier that 5 is the culmination of the story that started with Resident Evil 1, which I agree with you with. From a story perspective, that's objectively correct. So, would you advocate for someone starting with 5? Now, again, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I would. That's how I started it with my buddy Cinny. But if you were trying to make the argument that they shouldn't do a remake of 5 right now because they haven't done a remake of 1 in Code Veronica, then by your own logic, you shouldn't want them to start with Resident Evil 5 because it's not accessible from a story perspective. So yeah, people are going to have opinions on this.
Stories, these characters, this world. It doesn't have to be a template of how you experienced it and the order in which you experienced it.
Which again, no one is saying.
Time that you've experienced it. If they're here, fuck yes, welcome to the party.
No, if they're here, fuck yes, welcome to the party. Wrong. Just because they're here doesn't mean they should be here. Because a lot of usurpers and bad actors out there. Trust me, I'm pretty sure a whole lot of Tolkien fans aren't exactly chomping to the bit and clamoring for all these new Rings of Power fans out there breaking their toys.
pal, join in. Isn't this shit awesome? Like,
Toxic
that's how it
positivity
should be. Now, don't
from
get
this
me
beta
wrong.
male
Would
bitch.
I fully encourage somebody who is a new or a newer Resident Evil fan to at least give a shot at experiencing the old school games, whether it be the original versions or the GameCube remaster or whatever? Yeah, I would. Every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. But I would never look down on somebody or bar them from the fandom or turn my nose up at them if they go and attempt to play something that's 30 years old and they just don't quite get into it because they were raised in a different generation of video game making.
But even that is a bullshit argument. You want to know why? Because there are people nowadays, there are kids nowadays that are playing the original Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario World or whatever, and they love it. There are people that, for the first time ever, in the year 2026, 2025, that had never experienced Ocarina of Time before, and they did it, and they loved it. In fact, I've recently seen an influx of posts on X of people going back and playing Resident Evil 2, the original, for the first time, and falling in absolute love with it. The idea that's like, oh, it's older, so they might not have, the mental wherewithal to adjust to it. Bullshit. Older games hold up brilliantly. Obviously not all of them, but many older games hold up brilliantly. If you can't get past some visuals, sorry, you're the loser. You don't deserve to be here. Because it's not all about shiny, bright visuals, right? It's not about good graphics. Gaming, in fact, has never necessarily been about good graphics. And if that's the type of gamer you are, you're right. I don't fucking want you in this fandom.
Raised in a different version of controls and graphics and fidelity and the style and the structure of video games. It is a very different and jarring and sometimes really unpleasant experience to go back and play older games. It's just the reality. Even games that I love and have nostalgia for, sometimes even I can't go back and forth.
And there it is. They make an argument from nostalgia. They'll make an argument that everything is through the lens of nostalgia goggles, but they will never give credence to the argument that maybe the reason you like this new slop so much is due to the recency bias goggles.
Fully enjoy them anymore. You oftentimes hear people make comparisons between like watching an old movie and playing an old video game. Like I had somebody on Twitter that basically said, if you call yourself a fan of the Alien franchise, I can't take you seriously if you don't want to go back and watch the original Ridley Scott Alien.
Correct.
And they try to use that as a base of comparison for why you should expect Resident Evil fans.
And it is a very good comparison. And he's going to try and make the argument that gaming is different because it's an interactive medium, but it's not. And I'll explain why if that's the argument he makes.
To go back and play the old games and not coddle them with a remake. And I think that's such a ridiculous analogy. Watching a 30-year-old film fundamentally...
A 30-year-old film? Already that is dude, Ridley Scott's Alien came out in 79. That is closer to 50 years old. That movie is nearly 50 years old. It is 47 years old if I did the math off the top of my head correctly. Yeah. That's a pretty valid comparison to a game that's 28 years old, like Resident Evil 2. In fact, Alien, which is required watching for anyone that's a fan of the Alien franchise, because, it's kind of the one that started it all, and it's just one of the best movies ever made of all time. It's a top 3 movie for me, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, a 50-year-old movie, that's a pretty fair comparison to a 28-year-old game like Resident Evil 2.
Really isn't a different experience at all than watching a film that was released this weekend.
Did this bitch just say that watching a 50-year-old film is not a different experience than watching a film that came out today? I would like to remind you guys that this is a movie reviewer. His entire YouTube channel, because this is his second channel, his main channel he is a film reviewer. If he, as a professional film reviewer, holds the opinion that 50-year-old films effectively the watching experience is the same as modern films, why would you trust anything he has to say about film?
Going back and playing a 30-year-old game is entirely different than playing a game that was released this weekend.
Yeah, you're right. The games that released this weekend are games like High Guard. Games that were released 30 years ago, games like Resident Evil 2.
control schemes, graphics, the level design, the pacing of the story, the cutscenes, and the animations to kind of present that story, they're night and day different. In fact, to that point, the only way that you can actually make that analogy ring some bit of truth is if we were required to watch older films on whatever form of physical media they were released on originally, and they never...
And no, and even that doesn't work. Just like how you don't have to watch Alien 1979 only in the theaters and then maybe on like Laserdisc or VHS or whatever. Guess what? The original Resident Evil games are on GOG. Just like how you can watch Alien on Netflix on your big plasma screen TV, on your flat screen TV, on your streaming service, or you can pop it in your Blu-ray player, your 4K player, whatever. You can get Resident Evil 2 on GOG, or you can get Resident Evil 1 Remake on Steam. And it's actually got all the same quality of life updates as something like a Blu-ray 4K re-release of Alien from 1979. So the analogy actually works quite well.
Up converted to new ones. Like if you wanted to go back and watch Ridley Scott's original Alien, but you could only watch it on Betamax on a tube television. And even that doesn't completely capture the difference because you still have to interact with the video game.
And there it is. He was going to make the interactivity argument. You know what? Maybe you should stop rounding off the corners and the edges for these modern gamers. Maybe video games wouldn't suck so much nowadays if devs didn't try to keep making every game for everyone. Because as I keep saying, not every game is for everyone. You know, I got a buddy of mine. And he has got an 11-year-old kid, right? 11-year-old, by the way, 11-year-old daughter. This is a girl. So big shout out to female gamers. Now we rag on female gamers a lot, but I'm about to give y'all some credit. It doesn't happen often, so bear with me here. Buddy of mine got an 11-year-old daughter. She played Resident Evil 4 for the first time. The original, not the remake. The original for the first time this past summer. Fucking loved it. Very first game she'd ever beaten because she normally played stuff like Minecraft and whatnot. Like these sort of like more kid-oriented games. Minecraft, Roblox, shit like that. But he's like, yeah, she's getting to the point where she's almost a teenager. I'm going to start letting her play rated games. She played the original Resident Evil 4 on her Switch. Loved it. First video game she'd ever beat. Dude. Not even my own fucking kid, and you know the sense of, like, accomplishment and pride I had for that. I can only imagine what a fucking dad felt. Shout out, Colin. Dude, don't tell me for a moment that these youngins can't appreciate that shit. Was playing a game from 2005. The kid's 11. How? I mean, she's born in 2015. The game was 10 years older than her. Like, this is a disingenuous argument.
Passively watch an old film, no matter what quality of screen you're looking at it on, no matter what type of physical media you're watching it on. But a video game, you still have to interact with it. You still have to push yourself through to get to the rest of the story, to get to the rest of the gameplay. You still have to adjust to old controls. You still have to figure out how...
And guess what? That adjustment takes like 15, 20 minutes tops. It's not fucking hard. Tank controls, up means up. But again, even that, I want to reiterate, is a disingenuous argument. Because the remake of Resident Evil 1, which is what we're supposed to be talking about here, that's the point of the video. The video is called, Do We Need a Modern Remake of Resident Evil? The first one. Well, the version we have, the remake of the first one, the 2015 remaster, doesn't even have tank controls if you don't want it to be. You could toggle it on and off. So even that is a disingenuous argument.
Games were crafted back in the day versus today, modern times, modern console generations. There are so many potential blockades and turnoffs to old school games that have to be fully acknowledged if you're actually going to discuss this topic. And I think the other side of that is that the way that we experience storytelling and especially cutscenes and like the graphics of a video game today do make a bit of difference in how a story lands.
No, they don't. That is insane. That is like trying to say that Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, because of modern day technology, is going to make a difference in how the story lands compared to, reading the text from Homer. I mean, I guess that could be the case depending on how it's done, but it's not inherently the case. That is absolute cope.
We had certain expectations back in the 90s and early 2000s for video games. We understood the limitations. There's not really much limitation to video games anymore.
And that's why they're worse. And that's why video games now are worse, because devs don't have to get creative to work around said limitations. But also, let's be real, our expectations actually weren't that high in the 90s and 2000s, right? We were actually a lot easier to please in that time frame. It was not about expectations, because by and large, you couldn't have games come out broken and busted that just get fixed with a day 2 or a day 3 patch or whatnot. You had games coming out fully functioning, not selling you extra DLC for stuff that's actually locked on the disc. No, by and large, that's why it's not nostalgia, because things were, just by objective, measurable amounts, better due to the fact that we didn't have this mass influx of problems that we have with the gaming industry now. So not only is he making a disingenuous argument about Resident Evil, but he's also just making a disingenuous argument that is a revisionist history argument about gaming in the 90s and 2000s.
Video games where the visual experience, the storytelling rivals and sometimes even surpasses what we're capable of doing on the big screen or even in TV series at this point. And so if we just talk about Resident Evil as the one example here, I think there's good potential for a number of people who play video games nowadays that will go back and experience the Jill Sandwich version of Resident Evil and not really get the hype, not really.
And they don't need to, and we don't want them. Sorry, we don't. If you're a fan of something, be a fucking fan of the thing. Don't come in as a goddamn poser looking for clout and likes on Twitter. It's that simple. Move on to the thing that you actually care about, you fucking leech.
Understand the campiness, not really get into the tone of what the video games were back in the day. Versus if you have the type of storytelling that we've seen in Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, you mean the kind that takes away all the campiness and takes away the jokes and the one-liners and the things that are actually essential to the lifeblood of Resident Evil, the things that are part of its identity? Yeah, if you just remake the game and take away things that have been part of Resident Evil's core identity for years upon years, then maybe the new people will like it. Fuck you! We don't want those new people to like it, because that's not what Resident Evil is. And I don't want to give up my thing to make these people that wouldn't have been involved with the franchise otherwise now miraculously and suddenly happy. Fuck you.
Much more potential for them to go, holy shit, yeah, I get it. The hype is real. This is fucking awesome. Spencer Mansion all day, babe.
No, but they don't think the Spencer Mansion is awesome. They don't think the hype is real. They think that thing is real. That new chimera that is a destruction of the franchise, because again, it removes the core soul of what makes the game, what makes the franchise, the franchise. They're looking at a like fictionalized version, a fake manufactured version of what Resident Evil actually is. That way it could be more palatable to them and their sensibilities, which again, does what to us, does what to the history, does what to the fandom, only ostracizes them more. It makes Capcom believe that their new shiny remake versions are the superior versions, and I'm not making that up. Capcom said that. Capcom themselves, GOG had to fight to get Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, the PS1 versions, released on their platform, because Capcom, this is a direct quote, didn't understand why people would want to play those games. They have the superior versions with the remakes. The more you advocate for these remakes, the more you actually justify Capcom's greedy, money-grubbing thinking, and that the remakes are the superior definitive versions, and that they can just let the originals fall by the wayside. There's no demand for them. They're not artistic. They're not worth preservation. They're not worth the fans that have built that legacy for them. Because let's be real, Capcom, you wouldn't be where you are, without these classic fans. The ones that you're so quick to discard to win over these new individuals that won't actually stick with you when the new bright, shiny toy comes out in 6 months.
And you say something like that, and oftentimes you get the response of people's just frustration and disappointment of people not being able to go back and appreciate the way that things were, not being able to adapt to older control schemes, older versions of campiness, cutscenes, storytelling, not being able to appreciate where all this came from. And there's certainly some validity to that frustration that I can sympathize with, and I have myself sometimes. You have the same conversation every time you talk about a movie remake, where some people are totally enchanted.
Oh, but I thought comparing the movies was an invalid criticism.
champion of it. Maybe it'll be a cool new alternate version, a new reimagining that can coexist alongside the classic that I love, and other people that are much more cynical going, if that comes out, that's going to ruin the original, or it's going to taint or somehow diminish the original. Or if people like that one, I automatically hate them because now they like that version rather than the objectively better version that we got. And what I...
Yes, actually some things are objective. You know, he did the whole finger quotes thing, but some things are objective. For example, there are certain basic tenets to writing, right? There's certain basic tenets to writing. You can objectively tell whether a story is well written. Now, whether you like the story or not, that is subjective, but whether it is well written or not, there's objective tenets to that. In fact, if you compare the Resident Evil game from 1996 to the 2002 remake, you can say the Resident Evil 2 remake has objectively better graphics. So don't finger quote objective like it's some sort of nonsense term.
Always say to that is, you know, one, people's tastes are people's taste. If they prefer the Resident Evil 3 remake to the original because that's the style of gameplay they like, you can't hate them for that. You can get...
I mean, you absolutely can't hate them for that. You can't say people's taste are people's taste, so you can't have your taste. If my taste is to hate you for having a dumbass opinion like Resident Evil 3 remake is a good game, let alone a good remake, that's my taste. My taste is to hate your dumbass for having that opinion.
Give your perspective, you can bounce back and forth ideas and debate a little bit, but you can't hate them for that.
You can't.
But more importantly, the reason why
I do, by the way, I want you to know, if you've made it this far in the video and you're a fan of Resident Evil 3 remake, unless you're my boy Indy Andrew, who I give a pass to, I hate you. I want you just to know, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. If you like Resident Evil 3 remake, especially if you think it's better than the original, I do in fact hate you.
Champion movie remakes as well as video game remakes is that there's a lot of potential that somebody could play a newly revitalized version of the original Resident Evil, absolutely love it. Maybe that's their first Resident Evil experience, and that actually motivates them to go back and experience and check out the old games that they otherwise would not have had.
And congratulations, you're invited to the cookout. You're the right kind of fan. You know, that's why I said in the beginning, he was shadow boxing this villain that wasn't there. People who were like, oh, you can't get into Resident Evil with the new stuff. No. The difference between a fan and a clout-chasing tourist is whether or not they want to actually engage in good faith with the history and with the love of this franchise and the lore and the characters and the fandom itself. If you want to start with Resident Evil 2 remake, by all means. If you want to say it's better than the original, even though you've never played the original and you refuse to go back to it, you're a fucking tourist. If you go back to the original, you play it, even if you don't even necessarily like it, but you appreciate and respect it for its history, for its roots. If you tried to engage with the history of the franchise, with love and respect and passion, because you do actually care, congrats. You're a fan. We ain't got no beef. Again, unless you're a fan of Resident Evil 3 Remake, because that game is it's just straight fucking ass, bro.
I was a living example of that when Resident Evil 4 came out. Somehow I missed the party when the first three...
Right, and look at you now, advocating for toxic positivity and being a real, saying that gatekeeping is bad, while, again, knowing that gatekeeping certainly would say that Silent Hill film you're so upset about. So, yeah, I'm sure you're passionate about Resident Evil. Doesn't help the fact that you're kind of a fucking moron.
Resident Evil games and Code Veronica came out. I was so late to the Resident Evil fandom that I kicked myself in the ass every single...
What do you mean you were late to the fandom? Dude, it's going on, we're in Resident Evil's 30-year anniversary. Resident Evil 4 was 9 years into the franchise. If you were here for Resident Evil 4 like you claim you have, then you have been part of the franchise for far longer than not part of the franchise. You came in at the 9-year mark. We are at the 30-year mark. Like, dude, don't try to use yourself as some sort of metric for this, when clearly you're closer to the inception, closer to the beginning, closer to the original fan base than not.
No time I talk about it. But Resident Evil 4 was my first Resident Evil experience, and I fucking loved that game. To date, it's still
it's a
my
great game.
number 2 video game of all time, only behind the classic original Metal Gear Solid. But after I completed Resident Evil 4, a bunch of times and basically unlocked and uncovered every single corner, opened every drawer, found every single piece that was available in that current state of that GameCube game. What did I follow up by doing? I went out and I bought the Resident Evil remake on GameCube and the...
Yeah, great. You did what fans should be doing. Congratulations.
Ports of Resident Evil 2 and 3 and binged through those and replayed them multiple times, which I otherwise would not have had the motivation to do if I had not loved my initial experience and my indoctrination, if you will, with Resident Evil 4. And I would never want to prevent a potential of that happening to some younger kid or some person that's just getting into video games.
Again, he's making up a narrative that doesn't exist. He's pretending this argument is something that the majority of us classic fans hold to, when that's not the case. It is... I've used the word disingenuous a lot in this video, but that's all his arguments are disingenuous arguments. Or if I was to be charitable, they're very misinformed arguments. I don't, by the way, think that they're misinformed. I do think he's being disingenuous.
Games, or somebody like me that just somehow played video games but always missed the party on Resident Evil, that might get locked in with a Resident Evil 1 remake. The other most popular pushback that I see is that Resident Evil already has a remake and it's perfectly playable and it is readily available on modern consoles. It would be
correct. So stop there. Don't by the way, we're 15 minutes into a 20-minute video about why Resident Evil 1, the first one, you believe should get a remake, and you haven't actually made an argument for why. You've just made an argument for, in terms of, like, mechanics, graphics, things like that. You haven't really made an argument for why. All you've been pretty much saying for 20 minutes is, accessibility for newbies that are too dumb to play old game. That's all you've actually said for 15 minutes. But even then, how about you shut the fuck up, right? You're like, hey, there's already had a remake. It's perfectly accessible on modern systems and consoles. Perfect, great. Shut the fuck up, because that's all true, and you can end it right there. You're right, Resident Evil 1 doesn't need a remake, because it has one, and it's accessible, and it holds up.
It's stupid to remake it again. They've already done this. And that's the argument that I see, that typically I just have to assume that people are being purposely obtuse just to...
It is absolutely not an obtuse argument. You are out of your fucking mind.
Feel like they're winning a Twitter argument. Yes, they remade Resident Evil for the GameCube in 2002.
So? Why does the year matter? You say that like the year matters, when if a game is good and holds up, it's good and holds the fuck up. The year is completely irrelevant. Again, Ocarina of Time, 1996. Still brilliant, still holds up amazingly. People still really fucking love that game. Still the highest rated game of all time on Metacritic. But also, take that 2002 shit and shove it up your ass, because that's another disingenuous argument. How about we actually talk about the 2015 version, the most updated version that has the most QOL, that actually has the most amount of accessibility for younger, and not even necessarily younger, but newer players. So again, you are lying.
It's been 24 years nearly. You know what other games came out in 2002 that have also already been remade and modernized for modern console gamers? Metroid Prime. You got...
No. Metroid Prime got a remaster, not a remake. Don't you for a fucking moment, you lying snake.
Mafia, Ratchet and Clank.
No, Ratchet and Clank got a reboot, not a remake.
Supposedly they're working on a Splinter Cell, but maybe Splinter Cell. Let's not act like games from 2002 weren't a long fucking time ago. Yeah.
Again, that's how long ago something was, once again, is an irrelevant argument.
They've cleaned up the graphics. It looks really good on modern consoles. It's still a 2002 version of that game. And
he actually can't make notice how he can't make an objective argument as to why that's a bad thing? Like all he can say is, 2002 is old. Am I right, guys? No. No. In fact, if I wanted to be pedantic, 2002 is the blink of an eye, depending on your time span, how long things have been going, how long the history of the universe is going. Now, I'm not going to do that. I'm not I am an asshole. The point is, no, 2002 really wasn't that long ago. Like in the grand scheme of things, 2002 really wasn't that long ago. But even if it was, that's irrelevant because you're just saying things that any sort of frame of reference to back it up. You're not making an argument. You're just saying things for people to agree with you. You're making just statements of fact. It was 2002. Okay, yeah, and what are we going to do with that? The game still holds up brilliantly, especially the updated 2015 re-release Steam version and PS4 version. So this is such a bad faith video, dude.
Even with the option to use more modern controls rather than the classic tank controls with the 2 sticks, it's still a very different, old school, and jarring experience
really
if you're used to modern versions of video games, especially the modern versions of Resident Evil games. So this is just yet another...
Really, the modern version of Resident Evil games. Which ones? The remakes that have been coming out, or the first-person modern Resident Evil games like Resident Evil 7 and 8, which are also notably different from each other, which are different from Resident Evil 6, which is different from Resident Evil 5, which is different from the spin-offs. Hell, you're going to have 2 completely different play styles in Requiem. They've already said that Grace is going to have a different play style than Leon. So don't sit here and pretend like Resident Evil players aren't used to changing of playstyles. Resident Evil has a fucking identity crisis. It changes its own playstyle every like 3 fucking games.
Another example of something where I would say, hey, I would encourage new Resident Evil fans to go and check out that game, especially with how readily available and inexpensive it is. It's a fucking fantastic version of that original game. But it's still old school. It's still something that is very much a style of gameplay that for a lot of people would be considered dated. So
Really? I'm curious. Let's just take a quick look at let's see. Tormented Souls 2 review. For anybody that knows, IGN 7 out of 10, Steam 9 out of 10, 78% on Metacritic. I don't know. Seems like Tormented Souls 2 got some pretty damn good reviews because it's scoring well, and this is a modern game, came out just last year, made in the exact same vein as the classic Resident Evil games. Made in the exact same vein as the classic Resident Evil games. What about Flesh Made Fear review? Let's see, Flesh 9 out of 10 on Steam, 9 out of 10 on 8-Bit Digi. Yep, there we go. Flesh Made Fear. Let's take a look here. Again, another game made in the... In fact, this game even more old school. Made in the exact same vein of the... Alright, that's a terrible website to use. Made in the exact same vein as the classic, and I mean PS1 style games. Right here, 4.6 stars. So yeah, I don't want to hear that it's as if there's not this hunger, this appetite, this market for these types of games. The indie horror scene has been killing it on Steam. Why? Because they're actually giving survival horror fans what they want, which is classic survival horror, not this modern slop that pretends to be horror, but in all reality, it is just a cheap veneer of horror.
Ultimately, my question is, what is the harm? What is the net negative for potential?
The net negative is for tourists like... I mean, Charity will not say tourists like you. You have been around for a while. You're just a brainwashed moron. You're a tool for the tourists. But the harm is for brainwashed tourists to come in and start advocating for these remakes that Capcom is clearly prioritizing or actually being original with the franchise when it has destroyed the core of the games. Again, Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 make fundamental lore and character altering changes that frankly don't even make the canon of the games make sense anymore. You have to effectively headcanon it to be alternate universes, alternate universe storytelling versions, and even then, they're not as good. Why fix what ain't broken? You don't need to be doing this. Now, if they were going to give us remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 that were like the remake of Resident Evil 1, actually done in the same style, just maybe with some added content or whatnot, built from the ground up, by all means, that would be incredible. That's not what they gave us. That's not what they gave us at all. So I don't want to hear it. The harm is the dilution of the brand and the attempt to make Resident Evil something for everybody. Because when something is for everybody, it becomes for fucking nobody.
Potentially having a Resident Evil remake of the level of quality that we have seen from the other Resident Evil remakes.
That aren't quality.
The potential loss there? Whether you're an old school fan or a new fan or somebody who hasn't even become a fan yet, what is the potential negative? If you're a potential new fan, you got one more way to experience a classic, amazing, groundbreaking video game in the...
Except you're not. You're not experiencing a classic, amazing, groundbreaking video game. You're experiencing some new dev team that didn't actually work on the original, that has no respect for the original, it has no love for the original, it has no history with the original. You're basically copying someone's homework, doing a piss poor job, and then selling it as a nostalgic cash grab to also get new fans involved just so you can entice them to buy the next mainline game. It's crony corporatism wrapped in a package of member berries.
Original Resident Evil. If you're somebody who's already an established fan and just haven't gotten back to the old games yet, carry over what I just said for you. And if you're an old school fan, you just have one more version of that experience. Like nobody...
Yeah, but if it's not a good version, then why? If it's not actually done with the love and care, if it's not good, again, these people want quantity over quality. I don't want more Resident Evil, guys. I want good Resident Evil. Just throwing more thing at me and saying, buy your $70 and $80 video game slop, hog. It's Resident Evil, so you like it, right, piggy? No, actually. I'm of the opinion that Resident Evil should have stopped after Resident Evil 5. If we're being honest, it was the natural ending point for the story. Now, there's some things about Resident Evil 7 that I do like. There's even some things about Resident Evil 6 that I like. But all in all, series has been pretty much creatively bankrupt since then. Doesn't even feel like Resident Evil anymore. Really, Resident Evil 7 and onward should have been its own fucking IP, if you ask me. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, just saying, hey, that's more Resident Evil. Isn't that good, right? No. No, not all. More of thing doesn't mean thing is better or thing is worth it.
He bitched when the GameCube remake came out and said, we don't fucking need this thing. What is...
That did not happen, but okay.
Is the difference now? And if you're telling me that the original game or the GameCube remake is just an immaculate experience that should be put underneath a glass in a museum and should never alter it, tamper with it, or try to do anything to modernize it, then what was your argument if there was one for the Resident Evil 2, 3, or 4 remake? And if you...
The Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 remake should have been handled exactly like the Resident Evil 1 remake. The 2, 3, and 4 remake shouldn't have happened. Should not have happened, at least not in the fashion they did.
Loved any of those three. Again, what is the issue? I swear when it comes to remakes, whether it's movies or video games, some people act like it's fucking Fahrenheit 451 out there. Like a new one comes out and people bust through your door with flamethrowers like, where's the old one, bitch? Rah, it doesn't exist anymore, fuck you. Anyway, I don't know what direction they're gonna take. I don't know what the next game is. There was a lot of chatter about Resident Evil 5. Now there's a lot of chatter and a lot of rumors that Code Veronica is gonna be next.
Yeah, the Code Veronica chatter was happening first. This dude doesn't know what he's talking about.
And then they're going to do 5. There's some solid rumors out there that Resident Evil 0 is going to get the remake treatment. And I'll just say that, if we're going to remake 0 and not follow that up with a remake of 1, what the fuck are we doing? If there's truth to any of that, like, I hope all 4 of them get a remake. Let's do 0, then 1.
This dude just wants slop. This little piggy just wants slop. Eat it up, piggy. This is fucking disgusting, bro. And this is the people that Capcom cater to. These are the fans that Capcom caters to. You wonder why video games, and not just Capcom, and not just Resident Evil, but in general, you wonder why video games, just as a medium, the AAA scene is in such dire straits, is in such a dog shit position. It's people like you. It's people that just pay for the fucking slop, that they can just keep putting out quick, cheap, doesn't matter. Make their buck, move on. People just move on to the next bright, shiny new thing. Oh, you know what? This probably funded Pragmata or whatever. It is ridiculous. Indie and AA really are the future, and it's because of disgusting consumers like this.
1, then Code Veronica, then 5. As many as you're going to give me, as long as they're of the quality that we have expected from Capcom and have gotten from Capcom at this point. Give it to me, all of it, now. But I just think it would be a real shame for how amazing these remakes have been, in my opinion, at least 2 out of the 3 of them, that we would not potentially have that experience with the original game, Spencer Mansion, Chris, Jill, and Wesker. Like, I just see nothing but awesome things from that. And I don't see any negatives whatsoever that affect any current or old school Resident Evil fan unless you're just a grumpy old man yelling at Cloud type.
And there it is. Complete and total dismissal. Oh, anyone that disagrees is grumpy old man yelling at Cloud. No, what you call grumpy old man yelling at Cloud, I call having standards. I call caring about the thing. I will take the Henry Cavill route. It's not toxic fandom. It's passion. It's love and it's care for this thing that was part of not just our childhood, but part of history, of history when it comes to gaming, right? People come in and out of gaming at all various points in their lives. Resident Evil is credited as the game that effectively named the survival horror genre. It wasn't the first survival horror game, but it was the one that named the genre, and certainly the one that popularized the genre. And now when I look at Resident Evil, it's unidentifiable. Minus looking at Leon in the trailers, you wouldn't know that the Resident Evil Requiem is a Resident Evil game. When you look at Resident Evil 2, 3, 4, whatever, these remakes, beyond some visual member berries and cues, beyond the characters looking vaguely similar, you wouldn't know they were remakes. The heart and the soul and the story and the lore, all the things that I keep talking about are gone. So yeah, you sue me for wanting a little bit of quality control and wanting, Resident Evil, the original, the remake of the original, which is the gold standard for how video game remakes should be done, which is probably the most perfect representation of how a remake has ever been done in gaming history. Yeah, sue me for wanting that to be preserved as is and not sullied my modern slop. I'm sorry, I don't want the J.J. Abrams Star Wars effect to happen any more to my Resident Evil than it already has. But these are my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X. You can find me at Bolt the Word, and please do subscribe. We're definitely going for that 10,000 subscriber mark, and if you made it this far, I would truly appreciate if you join us. Also, check us out on Discord and Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon and become a member. For $4.99 a month, you can join the Discord, choose the articles you go over on a day-to-day basis, choose the videos we react to on the daily streams, and of course, get involved with over 250 other vital idols. We are a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community that I cannot wait to grow even further, because we do care about diversity. Only one kind of diversity. Diversity of thought. That's interesting to you. Join the Discord, subscribe. Until next time, it's all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.